Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are going to be looking at Cirque's newest Atelier Collection and at some returning jellies. So to give a little bit of info first, the Atelier Collection is here on the bottom. It is a 6-piece collection in an assortment of colors and finishes that are inspired by fabrics and textiles. And launching alongside that, we also have 4 returning jellies. So these jellies are going to be available individually as well as in these new sets. I will share a little bit more about those different sets and of course go over swatches of everything as well as comparisons. This is definitely going to be a little bit of a long one. As always, I will have timestamps in the description box, but for now, let's get into the swatches. The first shade in the collection is Cosplay Lamé, and this is described as a warm-toned brush gold metallic shade. So normally I find metallic shades to be very pigmented and even opaque in one coat, but I didn't quite have that experience with this one. It did apply really smoothly and evenly on the first coat, but as you can see when I move my nail around a little bit, you can see some nail line, and unfortunately it still was there after the second coat too, but I didn't do a third coat for this one just because in most lighting or like direct lighting, you really can't tell it's there. And then as far as the color goes, as you probably know, I'm not the biggest fan of these kind of antique looking golds, but I think it could work well for the holiday season and maybe especially in some nail art. The next shade we have is Mother of Pearl, and this is an ivory pearl polish with white silver magnetic pigment. So I knew I was going to be a little bit nervous swatching this one because I'm already not the biggest fan of pearl finishes, as I'm sure most people are not. But I also was not looking forward to how this was going to look because it's such a light shade. In case you don't know, Cirque's magnetics are very much on the jelly side, so they are incredibly sheer. As you saw on the first coat, it was super sheer to the point that it can kind of pass as a topper. But yeah, even on 3 coats, you can still make out my nail line pretty obviously, which I'm not the biggest fan of, and I feel like I didn't love the base color. It just kind of looked a little dingy and not like that really pretty ivory shade I was expecting. But not all hope is lost with this shade because I actually did really like how it looked with the velvet effect and even just applied as is with no magnetic effect at all. It definitely has more of a true pearlescent finish, so I kind of like the versatility with this one. The second magnetic in the collection is called Blue Velvet, and this is a navy blue velvet inspired shade with silver magnetic pigment. So I do want to make a quick note that Cirque actually mentions the previous shade is supposed to look best with the cat eye effect, and then this shade is supposed to look best with the velvet effect, but obviously I'm going to be showing you both techniques for both shades. So starting with the cat eye effect for this one, as you saw, this one still had a very sheer jelly formula, but it has a beautiful color. So it definitely builds up really nice and fairly even for the most part. I can sometimes do a little too thick of a coat with my jellies, so there might be some pooling on the side of my nails, but if you're more careful with your application, then you won't have that issue, and instead you will just have this really beautiful midnight navy blue polish. I really love the contrast of the shimmer. It kind of reminds me of like shooting stars or something, but of course I'm going to love this so much more with the velvet effect. So I decided to keep the clip in for this one because it just looked so insane when I did it. I know I tend to be a little harsh on Cirque's magnetics because I just don't love the jelly quality to them, but they really do work the best when it comes to velvet nails. Like, look at the shine for this. It is so insane, so plush looking. I can get lost in this. Like, I was just so mesmerized by how beautiful this was. I almost want to say this was like the best velvet nail I ever did. But here it is next to just no effect, applied as is, straight out of the bottle. I know some people might say that they can look similar this way, but I do not see it. Next up, we have Twinkle Tweed, and this is a tweed-inspired polish with multicolored holographic short slice glitters, which I'm pretty sure is Cirque's way of saying that they're bar glitters. And if you watched my Best of Holo Taco video, you know that I mentioned I do not love bar glitters, so I was the least excited about this shade. Like, I can see the appeal of using this as a topper. Here, I'm building it up in 3 coats, but I will be showing it over a sheer, a white, and a black afterwards. And I guess it is kind of cute there, but I don't know. When it comes to bar glitters, they just kind of remind me of like when you shave your legs and you get like little hair that's stuck on the tub or something like that. I mean, obviously, at least this is a lot prettier because it's more sparkly and holographic and multicolored. But yeah, I don't know how often I'll actually be using this polish. Let me know if you're a fan of bar glitters or not. And here it is as a topper in 1 coat over a sheer, a white, and a black. And I did kind of like how it looked over the white because you were able to see the actual colors of the bar glitters. Next up, we have Red Bottoms, but I've been pronouncing it as Red Bttms. And this is basically a red jelly with a scattered holo that is inspired by Christian Louboutin red bottoms. This definitely had a really nice formula. It was very pigmented and pretty even coverage on the first coat alone, but obviously because it's a jelly, you still see a ton of nail line, so you are going to want to build it up in 2 or 3 coats depending on your preference. I think it looks really nice here on the second coat. Again, it is very even coverage. You just get a hint of nail line. So I think most people, especially with shorter nails, could get away with just 2 coats, but I decided to do 3 just to see how much more coverage I do get. It's not 100% opaque by any means, but my nail line is definitely very obscured. So yeah, I think this is such a beautiful holiday red. And rounding out the collection, we have Serpentine, and this is a deep reptilian green with orange to gold to green iridescent flakies. So this is another jelly-based polish, so it is going to be very sheer on the first coat alone, but you get a ton of flakies in this shade, so there is gorgeous payoff right away. I would say that this looks really great in 2 coats, like the majority of people could just wear this in 2 because again, it is so packed with flakies that it obscures whatever little nail line there is. The color also deepens up a considerable amount, so I just love how this looks. The flakies just glow, and even though it is very densely packed with flakies, it was still very smooth and easy to apply. And here is the collection lineup. It definitely is an interesting one, to say the least. I do appreciate the variety of finishes, and overall the color palette does remind me of winter and holiday shades. So now for our returning jellies, the first one we have is Indigo Jelly, and this is just described as a dark blue jelly. So part of me kind of hates the fact that they called it indigo because it is a very true blue shade. There's no real hint of purple, at least not that I can see. But that being said, it still is a beautiful dark blue jelly polish. It's not really going to be super impressive on 1 coat alone. Like most Cirque jellies, you're going to want to build them up in 2 or 3 coats depending on your preference. I would say this is one of Cirque's true jelly polishes because no matter how many coats you do, you are just going to see straight through to your nail line. But I don't mind it too much. I absolutely love this color too. It just gets a little bit deeper with each coat that you do, but I stopped at 3. I'm so happy this one's back. The next returning jelly is Mahogany Jelly, but you may have known this one as Walnut. This one is a warm toned brown, and I find that description very interesting because, as you'll see in my comparisons a little bit later, I wouldn't quite call the shade warm. I guess keep in mind that my nails are stained, so that could be affecting how I see the color, but I personally see this as a little bit more of a true neutral, maybe even a yellow leaning brown. It does have a beautiful color, but it's just not as warm as another brown jelly that I have from Cirque. But anyway, this was kind of like the last shade where it was very, very sheer on the first coat alone, so you are going to want to build it up in 2 or 3. And I accidentally did too thick of a coat here, so it does deepen up quite a bit, but you can still make out some nail line. Next we have Rust Jelly making a comeback, and this is a reddish brown brick colored jelly. So I was super excited about this one coming back because I just love the color rust and I think it is so perfect, especially for this time of year. Formula wise, this performed pretty much the same as the last two jellies, where it was very even coverage on the first coat alone, but still very, very sheer, so you are going to want to build it up in at least 2 or 3 coats. I do think it looks pretty nice on 2 coats, but the color was still just a bit too light for what I wanted. So I ended up doing a 3rd coat, and I do love the final color that is on my nails. I mean, it is like a perfect rust orange. It's absolutely gorgeous, but I found that this was the only jelly that ended up looking a bit lighter than what you see in the bottle, because in the bottle it kind of has that deeper brownish brick color to it, but on my nails it's pretty much like a red orange. And the last returning jelly is Mustard Jelly, but this was formerly known as Camel, and this is a muted yellow-orange jelly. So I really want to love this color. I mean, I guess just as a color, I think it's really pretty. I mean, maybe it's borderline ugly pretty, but I think as a jelly, I would almost just call this ugly. On the first coat alone, it is super sheer, so it just looks like really badly stained nails, and I think it kind of still looks like that on 2 coats. So I was hoping that a 3rd coat would kind of help deepen it up a little bit, you know, make it look more intentional. So yeah, while I do love the color, I just feel like because it's so sheer and you still see some nail line, it just doesn't look the most flattering, but you'll have to let me know what you think. So with the returning jellies, Cirque is also bringing back some of their sets. This first one is the Shibori set, which has Indigo Jelly, Cobalt Jelly, and Morningtide. So if you don't know, Shibori is a Japanese manual tie-dyeing technique that is primarily dyed with indigo. A lot of the designs that I've seen look very geometric, where it's almost like tile art in a way, and I didn't know how to do that on my nails using this set, so I just figured I can go for like a very smoky watercolor kind of look, starting with Morningtide as my base and then going in with Cobalt Jelly as the primary color across my nail, and then using Indigo Jelly to sort of deepen up some spots. Then I went back in with Morningtide to kind of blend out the edges while the colors were still wet, and I really loved how this looked. It is just such a cool effect. And then finally, we have the return of Cirque's Tortoise shell set. So this includes Mahogany Jelly, Rust Jelly, and Mustard Jelly. I have been waiting for years for this to come back, because if you watched my last video doing the nail art looks, I had never done tortoise nails before because I just didn't have the right jellies for them. And I just knew that this set would be so perfect for Cirque to bring back, especially in the fall, because everybody loves tortoise nails in the fall. So here I'm trying my first proper tortoise shell design, and I think I'm doing okay. I started with the lightest shade as my base and then went in with Rust Jelly and then Mahogany Jelly to darken up the spots, but they weren't getting as dark as I wanted, so I ended up grabbing Cirque's Memento Mori to add actual black spots to the tortoise design, just to really give it more depth. And then I went back in over with Mahogany Jelly to sort of blend it out a little bit, but I think I like the finished look. It's obviously not perfect. I think it's a little too light or maybe too red, but I'm excited to try it again. And lastly, Cirque is introducing a new set called the Blonde Tortoise Shell set, and this includes Organza, which is a milky peach sheer, and NSFW jelly, which is their black jelly. So first off, I do want to say that I don't agree with Organza's description being a light peach, because when I think of peach, I think of something that's a little bit more orangey leaning, and this is definitely very yellow based. But that being said, I do think it is like the perfect color to match the typical blonde tortoise kind of print. So I do like that this is being sold as a set. So I'm using 2 coats of Organza as my base and then dotting in these little spots with NSFW NSFW jelly, and then doing a coat of organza to sort of encapsulate that. In case you missed it, I did try this look for the first time in my last video, but I used Cirque's Vanilla Bean as a base just to kind of have a more opaque base to start out with. I think having the little black flecks in Vanilla Bean also added a tiny bit of detail to the overall look. But yeah, so this is technically my second time trying this blonde torty design, and I thought I was doing well, but then I think in the end I ended up adding a little too much black, so it just looked a little bit splotchy maybe. And again, using NSFW jelly, it is super sheer, so you do have to do an extra layer or two just to really get a deeper black color, which I thought I wanted, but it just kind of looked a little too harsh. So I ended up using another coat of organza to encapsulate that again, and I do like how this looks more. So finally, getting into comparisons, we're starting with Cosplay Lamé and looking at it next to 24K Affair, which is also from Cirque. These might look similar in the bottle, at least in this shot, but they definitely are very different. Cosplay Lamé almost has a more antique gold kind of color with a more true metallic finish, while 24K Affair is a little bit warmer with more of a shimmer effect. Then for Mother of Pearl, I knew I needed to see this next to Chemistry, which is Cirque's Silver Jelly Magnetic, which is also super sheer that it can be a topper. I really thought these were going to be like much closer to being dupes, but as you can see color-wise, Mother of Pearl does indeed have that slightly ivory kind of color to it, but even finish-wise, they are a little bit different as well. I'm wearing two coats with no effect, and you can see that Mother of Pearl is definitely a lot more opaque with more of that true pearl finish. With a velvet effect, they definitely look a little bit more similar, but Chemistry is still a lot more sheer. And then with the cat eye effect, I would say they look the most similar this way because they have a super sheer jelly base. You do get a hint of pearl from Mother of Pearl though. Next for Blue Velvet, I knew I had to see this next to ILNP's 0 Degrees, which you might know is one of my favorite magnetic polishes. They definitely have very similar vibes and effects, but the colors are slightly different. Cirque's is a little bit more of a true navy kind of color, like it has more of a steely gray, midnight blue, and the shimmer is a little bit more of a true silver, whereas ILNP has more of a cerulean color overall with like a brighter blue shimmer. It might be a little bit hard to tell here on the nail, especially with no effect or a velvet effect. The shimmer kind of obscures the color a little bit, but I think the biggest difference is with the cat eye effect. Cirque's jellies don't have any extra hollow sparkle or flakies or anything like that, so it just has a very plain magnetic stripe across the nail, but ILNP has a little bit extra sparkle. So they're not exact dupes, but I would say they're definitely really similar. Next for Red Bttms, I was hoping that this was going to be a good alternative for Fire Opal, which is this absolutely stunning red holographic jelly from Cirque. It was discontinued a couple years ago, and I'm still so sad about it because it is one of my favorite reds from them. But unfortunately, these are pretty different, especially color-wise. Fire Opal is just much deeper and more of a true red bottoms color, in my opinion. So then I thought I can try and recreate red bottoms by using Lucky Jelly and then Mooncat's Moondust as a little dainty hollow topper. And I was kind of impressed with how close this was because I didn't think Lucky Jelly was going to be a close enough match to the red that Red Bottoms is, but they are pretty identical. So here I did one coat and then two coats of Moondust. The sparkle isn't exactly the same, but you pretty much get the same effect. So if you have these two shades, then you don't need Red Bottoms. And then for Serpentine, I tried to also recreate that, but using Kelly Jelly and then Holo Taco's Solar Unicorn Skin, as well as Mooncat's Fool's Gold, just for a little extra gold flaky. I ended up doing this jelly sandwich with the layers that you see here, but overall, the flakies in Serpentine I think are a lot larger. Maybe Holo Taco's Lunar Unicorn Skin would work better, but either way, Kelly Jelly is just way too light for how dark Serpentine is. And then lastly for the jellies, I wanted to do some quick bottle comparisons with Indigo Jelly, Cobalt Jelly, and Navy Jelly, just because they're all in that darker blue kind of family, but they are definitely not dupes. Indigo Jelly is the more true navy color, Cobalt Jelly is almost like a neon color, and then Navy Jelly is more of a true denim, if anything. And then lastly, for Mahogany Jelly, I had to see this next to Cocoa Jelly, which also released a couple of years ago. This one I would call more of a warmer brown shade. It is a little bit lighter than Mahogany Jelly. It might be hard to tell just by the bottles, but on the nail, they definitely do show up pretty differently, where I'm showing 2 coats of each, and you can see it's a lot more sheer on Cocoa Jelly's side. So not dupes. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Cirque's Atelier Collection and their Returning Jellies. So as always, I would love to know what your thoughts are on these releases. As far as the collection goes, I think it's definitely a very fun theme, and I do like the assortment of finishes and colors. I really do get that mix and match, like fabric and textile inspiration coming through. And overall, I do think it is really fun. I just can't help but get heavy holiday and winter vibes from it. And at least from what I have seen in the initial emails, this isn't being marketed as a holiday collection. So it makes me curious to see what Cirque is going to be releasing next month, because I feel like this could have passed as a unique take on a holiday collection. Overall, I think I'm a lot more excited about the Returning Jellies because I feel like it's been years since I've been like begging for them to come back, especially the Tortoise set. I don't know about you, but I always see Tortoise nails, especially in the fall. And I'm honestly kind of surprised it took Cirque so long to bring them back, because it seemed like for a while they were the only brand to have jellies that were perfect for tortoise nails, and it seemed like such a popular design that kept coming back year after year. So to see them only just now, like 3 years later, bring them back, it feels like almost a missed opportunity for the previous years. And I also wish they were released a little bit earlier in the season, because it is already November. A lot of people are moving on to holiday designs. Obviously, I'm excited to use these and try my hand at some proper tortoise nails, but I feel like this would have been so much better if it had released in like September. Overall though, I am really happy that they are back. Now I just really need them to bring back that deep purple from their Amethyst set. I don't know why they didn't bring it back. I know we have Eros Jelly, but I feel like that's just not as deep as that initial purple jelly from that set. So hopefully we won't have to wait too long for that. I know I'm definitely very biased because I love jellies, and especially Cirque's jellies, so I'm excited about these. I do know a lot of people have been so over jelly nails, and especially Cirque releasing a lot of jellies this year. So you'll have to let me know how you feel about these returning shades or about the collection in general. I would love to hear your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.